All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, I'm Jeremy with Lifted Adventures, and this is Jeremy's Pedal Power Hour. Today is a special event because our special person that we have with us is in a different organization, different area, I guess, not organization, different area than we normally do our interviews. But we're gonna have fun today. Way this works, we're getting people starting to come in here. Way this works is I want you guys to run the show. I have a special guest on. We do interviews with everybody from YouTubers, mountain bike pros, and leading industry companies, something like that. So get some questions out and ready for our special guest. And without further ado, straight from some crazy, awesome looking views and hot springs in Colorado, we have Payson McElveen. How you doing, sir? Can you hear me?
I can hear you
Okay,
great.
cool.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can almost feel the water. It looks amazing. Talking to you, we just had a moment, and the view is gorgeous. Where exactly are you in Colorado?
I'm in Uray, which is about an hour and a half from my home of Durango.
That's awesome.
We're actually driving back from a shoot that I had earlier today, and time was getting sort of tight for getting back to the house in time for this chat. So we decided to play it safe and stop in Uray for some dinner.
That's awesome.
And there happens to be an amazing hot spring here. And I decided, you know what? It's kind of weird potentially, but I'll just do the interview from the hot spring.
Now, everybody, Payson did ask me for permission, and I gave him complete permission to do this. And I've never had an experience like this, but I feel like I'm there with you. I'm gonna turn the heater up in the house, and I have some water here. I might spritz myself here in a moment. And I'm wearing my hat like you're wearing your hat. It's just not as cool because my wife will not let me grow a mustache. Yes, everybody, this is the man who is he naked? That's the first question. Someone asks, is he naked? No, I'm sure he's not because I hear people around.
No, this is not a nude hot spring. There is one right around the corner. We opted for the
Yeah,
family
that's
family
that's
system.
that makes it a little bit more YouTube appropriate. I'd rather stay monetized and not demonetize this video. So awesome. So way this works, guys. I have him on here, and this is live. Get some questions out and start asking those questions you wish you could ask, and we'll get started. So. You're going through a lot. It took a while for me to get you on here. What kind of stuff you got going on right now, if you're allowed to say? I know.
Yeah. So I can't even remember when we first got in touch, but
Yeah,
I want to say January or February
I think
probably.
so.
But I was out in California doing my customary winter training camp, and then headed back home for 5 days to unpack after 2.5 month, 3 month, 2.5 months in California training. Had 5 days at home, and then hit the road again. And went to Uganda, Africa, to help my girlfriend with the nonprofit that she has over there.
Okay.
So I spent a couple weeks over there doing some philanthropic work as well as some training, doing some pretty wild uh, rainforest adventure riding.
Mm-hmm.
And then just got home back to Durango yesterday, day before yesterday. So I've had a total of 6 days at home in 2021 so far.
That's insane.
And then today, so second full day home, we drove 4.5 hours to Crested Butte to tie up the last bit of shooting for a new mountain bike movie with Matchstick Productions,
That's awesome.
which is going to be a feature length film on Amazon Prime and all that sort of thing. So it's been pretty full tilt, and I appreciate your patience making this happen.
I completely understand. It's all good.
Yeah, here we are now sitting in a hot spring, which wasn't expected, but can't complain.
That's awesome. Now the sign behind you says it's only 6 inches deep right there.
3 feet 6 inches.
3 feet 6 inches. All I see is 6 inches, and I
Yeah, so
know
I'm actually
I know I'm a tall
sort of
guy, but
I'm sort of crouching on my knees a little bit right here to get camera level.
Yeah, yeah, it's
And it's
okay.
good too because it's kind of cold out, so I'm just keeping my shoulders underwater to stay warm.
That's awesome. Now, what you guys don't see is he actually has his chest hair formed into the same shape as his mustache, and it's that's what won his girlfriend over, was that, not the mustache. But talking about the mustache, everybody knows you by, I mean, me. I know you by the mustache. Obviously, you're more than just the mustache, but where did the mustache come in? I know a lot of people want to know that, but where did the mustache come into play?
Let's see. So I had let's see. This is 2016.
Mm-hmm.
I was getting ready to race the Iceman Cometh, which is sort of the customary grand finale of our race season. It's in
Mm-hmm.
Traverse City, Michigan. First week of November, typically pretty cold, sometimes kind of snowy. It's actually the largest mass participation mountain bike race. Um, Still to this day, there's 7,000 people on the start line every year. Super cool
Jeez.
event, and it's cold and wintry. And so that year, I decided, yeah, maybe I'll try to grow a beard, get in the winter vibe
Yeah.
beforehand. Grew the beard, didn't really like it. It was sort of uncomfortable, so just spur of the moment, shaved in a mustache like a few days before the race, and I ended up finishing second that year, second or third, but on the podium.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, a lot of people thought it was. Some people thought it was funny. Other people thought it legitimately looked good, which I questioned. But regardless, it was somewhat of a hit, and I decided to keep it for a little while.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of, created some momentum for itself, I guess. And I literally got a call from a sponsor in like March, so about 6 months after that happened, saying, you know what, from a branding standpoint, we think this makes a lot of sense. We would strongly advise you to think about keeping it from a branding standpoint, at least for a while. And I was like, wow, that's a very forward request, but sure. Um, and then it just kind of stuck. And my dad's always had facial hair. It's sort of
Yeah.
been a family tradition. So at this point, I don't know. I don't even think about it anymore. It's just
That's
part
awesome.
of the gig.
It's been years. Yeah, like I said, my wife won't even if I grow it, she says she's not going to kiss me. She's not going to even look at me. She can't stare at me if I have a mustache.
Yeah,
So
that's rough.
yeah, it is what it is. It's okay. I accept it every day of my life. So let's see. First question. Octodad is asking when you were doing the white line record, or is it the white rim record? Uh, did you have enough water? Only 2 bottles. Did he preload with water?
Definitely didn't have enough water.
Yeah.
That was a bit of a roll of the dice that made sense in my head beforehand. And actually, my coach even said, I don't think that's a brilliant idea, but you do you. And kind of the way I justified it is I did prehydrate pretty aggressively.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I definitely undershot, and my heart rate actually did some super crazy stuff in the last couple of hours. It just
Yeah.
kept going up and up and up and up in a pretty sketchy way. So actually, last fall I went out kind of spur of the moment, just on my own to do another white rim just for fun, and I took a whole 26 ounces more,
Yeah.
and I went 15 minutes faster than I did that first try when we did the film. So yeah, every time you do a big effort like that, you learn things, and even at this stage of my career, I'm making mistakes and learning from them.
So you think that better time was because you were more hydrated during the actual ride?
Partly that, and the bigger thing was just it was a year and a half later, and so I just had a year and a half more to
Yeah.
improve. I mean, I'm young enough that I'm still getting better every year, so I just had a little bit better fitness, and then that combined with better nutrition, I think,
Yeah.
were what happened there.
How young are you actually?
I'm 28.
28. Okay. So I'm 7 years older than you. I don't have a chance. That's awesome. Well, you do a lot. I know I had buddies that wanted me to ask this question. You do tons of different disciplines. Which is your favorite?
Depends on. That's a good question, actually. I mean, I got my start in mountain biking, and I'm still a mountain biker at heart for sure. There are a handful of gravel events that I really, really enjoy. This past year, I kind of dabbled in some bike packing, which was really cool too.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say still my favorite would be a mountain bike race in the like 3 to 5 hour range.
Okay.
A good, you know, technical, challenging mountain bike race, long enough that you've got to have real depth, really good endurance, but not so long that it's like a survival death march.
Okay. So we got Lutzi on.
Oh God.
He's already asking questions.
No.
He wants to. Here it goes. You're already saying oh no. So, and this is what happened whenever he was on. I had him on the show, and he had some friends come on and ask some crazy questions. Man, I keep having people just ask crazy questions.
Just tell me Porter's not on here. As long as Eric Porter's not on here.
Eric Porter hasn't popped on yet, but Eric was asking him questions left and right. So he wants to know what it means to own it like Oprah.
Oh, that's a good question. I thought he was going to ask me why I was being so unprofessional and taking an interview in a hot spring, but no, that's a good question.
Yeah, Lutzi, don't get him in trouble for doing this.
It's kind of a long answer, but I'll try to give the full picture because Lutzi's here and he's to thank for it. Basically, when we decided to start the podcast, Aaron, the person that just asked that question, was pretty pivotal in making it happen, both from a guidance standpoint and then also just making sure that I had the basic nuts and bolts in the beginning, equipment-wise, the know-how, definitely the network for the first handful of interviews. Well, lots of interviews, but especially in the beginning. And there was kind of this debate amongst a handful of us about whether to house the podcast under some sort of pre-existing organization that had media know-how already and some infrastructure, or to just start from the ground up on my own, sort of scrap and like, you know, just scrape the pennies off the floor and do it humble style from day one, and quote unquote own it like Oprah. And there's pros and cons to both, but Lutzi's point from the beginning was kind of, you don't know how big this thing's going to get. You don't know how successful it's going to be. And just bet on yourself. Like, that's kind of what I've done my whole career. And if you really have the passion to do something and really want to do it well, bet on yourself. And in that case, that sort of means own it like Oprah. Own it 100%. You know, don't do any sort of like licensing deals from the beginning, and just have 100% control from day one, to steer it as you want to. So thanks to his guidance, that's what I decided to do, and I'm so grateful that is the choice I made in hindsight.
That's awesome. Lutzi's an awesome guy, and he got us connected, so that's perfect. Yeah, so you do a podcast. You don't do yours live, but you have, I mean, I told my buddy, we were on a gravel ride, and I was like, hey, I'm going to have Payson on, and he freaked out, almost wrecked his bike. Where did it come into play? When did you decide you wanted to do a podcast and do it all? I mean, you've been biking for, I mean, how long have you been biking first off? You've been mountain biking your whole life almost, right?
Technically since I was 4.
Okay. So
I started racing when I was 14.
Okay.
I had other interests like basketball and track and field and that sort of thing for a while.
When did the podcast come into play? When did you decide you wanted to start that podcast?
Shortly after I signed with Red Bull. One thing that's really cool about having Red Bull as a sponsor is they really encourage you to kind of diversify as an athlete, rather than just focusing 100% only on your sport and being one-dimensional. They really encourage you to spread your wings.
Yeah.
And you know, develop other interests and other avenues of creating value and other ways of engaging with fans and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so early on, we were kind of trying to decide what that looked like for me. And I have an English writing degree, so we sort of thought about doing an editorial thing. But I was also always have been a really big fan of radio and podcasts and that sort of thing. And um, a couple of people at Red Bull sort of urged me to explore that, and I was pretty resistant because so many people have podcasts these days
Yep.
that I wasn't sure it was going to be. It seemed like it would be kind of hard to cut through the noise and have a successful one. But eventually, he put this list in front of me of literally just the people that I already knew and a few more people that I knew of that he knew. And it was mostly Red Bull athletes and folks in that family, and not necessarily all Red Bull athletes, but friends of the Red Bull family. And I was like, holy cow, this is an incredible guest list already. I have super cool conversations with these folks at dinner or at training camps or whatever it is as is. Why not just start recording some of them and see where it goes? And so that's how the podcast started. Basically having the exact same conversations that we always have anyway, but just making sure that they were recorded and then published.
That's awesome. What are your what's your plans for the future of the podcast? Do you see it just growing even bigger or doing something different, or are you going to keep it the whole the way you run it?
I mean, for one, it's an incredible amount of work just weekly. To make one happen every single week is a lot of work.
I completely understand.
Just the audio component is pretty consuming. That said, I really enjoy doing film stuff as well. So we've done a handful of like special episodes, I would say, where we have a little film component. We call that Stash TV.
Yeah.
So we did one with Reggie Miller, did one with Justin Williams recently when he just got his Red Bull helmet, and we're actually releasing one tomorrow with Brad Copeland, Kate Courtney's mechanic.
Okay.
So that'll be the episode tomorrow. So there'll be a film component with tomorrow's episode. So stuff like that I'd like to do more of. At a certain point, it's just a matter of bandwidth. I still am trying to win races, and that's really time consuming. But I'd like to do more of the film component. I'm really looking forward to being able to travel again and do episodes in person because the quality of conversation is just better. And just consistency.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been almost 2 years, which feels like a while, but in the scheme of things, it's not very, very long. So just making sure we get to 10 years and it's a quality 10 years that we can look back on and
that's awesome.
Be excited about the next 10 years.
Do you find it? You don't find your interviewees who you're interviewing? Red Bull does that for you, though, eh? Is that what you were saying?
No. I mean, now and then, I'll just kind of mine the contacts list. If there's someone that I'm really interested in having on, chances are good Lutzy knows them. But if not, Red Bull has such an extensive network that it's helpful to tap into that now and then. But
that's awesome.
By and large, it's a lot of times it's just an opportunistic thing. Just where I am, if I'm at a race. I'm trying to think of an example. Like Lael Wilcox, one of the most badass cyclists in the world. I was just exchanging text messages with her at what was Dirty Kansas, now Unbound, here before last. And I was like, hey, this is 2 days before the race. Hey, do you want to do a podcast? We're both here. She's like, yeah, sure. This is my Airbnb. Come over. So a lot of times it just happens that way too.
That's awesome. Now, obviously, we talked about a little bit the mustache. Does that get everything like the adventure stash and what you say your film is your movie
Stash TV. Yeah.
Stash TV. Does that in all honesty does that annoy you? I mean, it's you're known for the mustache. I mean, you're obviously, like I said before, you're known for so many more things. You're an awesome, you're top rider. Does the mustache ever get kind of tiring?
Not really.
No?
I don't think about it a whole lot. It's sort of like, I don't know, it's a weird analogy, but like I have one tattoo from winning single speed world championships,
Mm-hmm.
and I totally forget that I have a tattoo. Like, people say, "Hey, have you ever thought about getting tattoos?" I'm like, "Nah." Oh wait, I have one. So the mustache is kind of like that also, where
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just I'm so used to it at this point.
yeah,
And I'd rather the brand be kind of like fun and slightly weird,
yeah,
rather than just putting my name on everything and hoping that that does it. Like, rather than my YouTube videos being like Payson McElveen TV, and then the podcast being like the Payson McElveen Show. I'd rather it be a little bit more um, off the wall than that, I guess.
yeah,
Because at the end of the day, I think it's easy to take yourself too seriously with this stuff,
yeah, yeah.
and I
I
think
understand.
when everything revolves around a mustache, you can't take that too seriously.
That's totally awesome. That's totally true. Let's see. We got some more questions coming in. Lucy's asking now. Let's see. What is the most important thing Payson has learned from a non-MTV guest on the podcast?
Ooh, that's a good question. That is a very good question. It's hard because I feel like basically every interview, anytime you sit down with someone that's accomplished
Mm-hmm.
and you give them your complete focus for an hour or more, you're going to pick up awesome stuff. It's just inevitable. So it's really hard to boil it down to one thing. Um, Geez, that's a tough one, Lucy.
He's like the holy man. Got some crazy questions. That's awesome.
I think there's one thing that's memorable that happened recently is I had a smoke jumper on the show, which is basically like the Navy SEALs of firefighters.
Uh-huh.
So they literally parachute out of planes into the flames and do hand-to-hand combat with wildfires. And I was the guest was this woman who, so there's 200 smoke jumpers globally, and she's one of 9 women,
Yeah.
which is awesome. And she lives in Durango, and we did a 3.5-hour episode. It was crazy.
That's
And I
long.
got a message. Yeah, I got a message, or it was actually a phone call like a month after the episode came out, from one of my favorite people to work with in the cycling industry. Someone that's been a really beneficial part of my career, just in terms of opportunities and stuff. And he said, "Hey man, just wanted to let you know I'm leaving my position at this cycling brand. I've been thinking for a while about wanting to be a firefighter, and then when I listened to your podcast with Martha, it was the last straw. Wish you the best as with your association with this brand, the one that he left, in the future. But I'm off to be a firefighter." That podcast sealed the deal for me. So that was pretty crazy, just to
Wow.
see the impact
Touching
that.
people's lives, not even knowing you're doing it.
Yeah, but I mean, I think a lot of it is just giving people. First of all, I think one of the keys to being a good interviewer is just like the art of shutting up and the art of really listening.
Mm-hmm.
And the less I say, the better, basically. And really, it's more about identifying interesting people who maybe haven't quite gotten the shine they deserve. And Martha was certainly in that category. Just hands down, one of the most impressive people I've ever met. She lives in the same town I do, a town of 18,000 people, and I'd never heard of her. So just crazy stuff like that is always a really cool part of the podcast.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, and someone else, Robert Taylor posted Reggie Miller. Yeah, you had Reggie Miller on.
We've
That's
had him on, I guess, twice.
okay.
He was the very first episode, and then we did another one that I think was like episode 80 or something, or 90.
That's awesome. Reggie Miller. That's my childhood right there. Let's see. Robert Taylor's also no. Octodad is asking, what big races do you have in 2021 coming up?
A lot. The first big one will be Unbound. And then what's next? I finally plotted out my schedule just 2 weeks ago, like officially with my coach, since
Mm-hmm.
it finally feels like we're maybe turning the corner on COVID, with vaccines and everything. So pretty much all the big ones that are still available. So Unbound, all the Epic Ride Series stuff, Leadville 100, um, Iceman, National Championships, uh, Rebecca's Private Idaho. Hopefully see Lucy at that one. I think I'm gonna do this one in Wales. It sounds really cool. Grinduro Wales, it's called.
Mm-hmm.
Am I missing anything?
Grinduro. What is that one? Is that a gravel race?
Yeah, it's cool. It's sort of like it's gravel racing for mountain bikers. It's like the course is basically that gravel ride that you do where you weren't sure if the route would go through and you end
Mm-hmm.
up like riding a bunch of kind of gnarly single track in the middle of your gravel ride.
Yeah.
That's sort of the Grinduro vibe. And actually that reminds me, this is funny. There is an event that I'm really, really excited for this year that's also kind of Grinduro-esque, but it's a new event that my buddy Colin Strickland and I are launching in October, and there'll be more details on that very soon. But we're launching our own event that folks can keep an eye out for.
Awesome. Awesome.
Every
Robert Taylor wants to talk more about single speed world championships. Where was it and how long of a ride?
It was in Bend, Oregon, in 2018. It was pretty long. It's 45 miles. I think 2.5 hours. It was awesome. It's probably honestly, it's probably my favorite race memory thus far.
Really? That's
Yeah.
awesome. What's the longest race you've done?
Depends on how you categorize that, but either Unbound, which is 200 miles in 10 hours,
Yeah.
or if you want to call the Colorado Trail record attempt a race, then that definitely was, but that's sort of a gray area.
That was over a couple days, wasn't that?
Yeah, that was 3 days.
Yeah.
Basically.
Okay. Yeah, I'm talking about the full actual like straight through.
Yeah, I mean, I've done stage races that are super long, but obviously
Yeah.
those are broken up.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see. Oh, I need to turn your volume up. I guess I did. That's good. Awesome. So, what do you have planned? You have a YouTube. Your YouTube channel is also your podcast, ain't it?
Sort of. So now and then I'll publish the interviews on YouTube. We were doing that mostly when I had Justin Williams on as a co-host. We were doing this quarantine companion special series.
Mm-hmm.
But these days I pretty much just post like higher production value stuff, like actual edited films and that sort of thing. So like I said, there's a little one with Brad Copeland going up tomorrow. And then there'll be some other stuff trickling out throughout the year. My YouTube channel is mostly to scratch my own itch of enjoying making short films.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that I put as much focus on. It's definitely not something I do as consistently, but I enjoy it when I do it.
That's awesome. So, a normal day for you. We had talked about you didn't really do any training today, workout, and this was kind of a good break. But you're still working. What is a normal day for Payson McElveen?
There isn't really a normal, to be honest. I mean, it's the only constant is that every day is different.
Yeah.
I'm constantly traveling, constantly. I mean, obviously riding a lot, but other than that, everything else is kind of in flux. The different media stuff I have going on. Sometimes I'm traveling.
Oh, I didn't do it.
There's a loud siren. Hang on one sec.
Wasn't me.
So yeah, I mean, sometimes I'm traveling for races. Sometimes I'm traveling for a media thing. Sometimes I'm traveling for a training camp. It's all over the map, literally. I mean, last year I never thought I would go to Uganda,
Yeah.
let alone go halfway around the world not for a race, just to go help a really awesome cause.
Yeah.
And put effort into just making the world a better place. Like that was an incredible experience, and things like that, not like that, but sort of surprising twists and turns are just always kind of happening. So it's really hard to describe a typical day, but action packed, I would say. My girlfriend's a saint. She puts up with a lot. Frankly, she lives a fairly similar life in that regard. She also wears lots of different hats, so we're a good match in that regard. But yeah, there's certainly days where it's like we're all over the place doing 9 different things, and it's hard to keep track of. But that also keeps it fresh.
Since you're doing a lot, you're always going on the move. You're always somewhere else, somewhere new, doing something else. What's your favorite thing to unwind, completely relax, get away from the whole professional mountain biker world?
Yeah, good question. To be totally honest, those moments are fewer and further
Mm-hmm.
between than I'd like. That's
Mm-hmm.
something that I'm always working on. But one of my favorite things to do is just to cook dinner with my partner Nicole, especially when we're at home. It feels so good to be at home and to be able to spend 2 hours carefully cooking a meal
Yeah.
rather than like 1 second. We just got the "you might get kicked out soon" notice. What time is it? Sorry.
It's 9:30 here.
Oh, okay. So
So
they're just giving us a half-hour notice. We're good.
okay, cool. Yeah, we're good.
Anyway, so where was I? Oh, unwinding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, one of my honestly just cooking dinner with Nicole goes such a long way. Um, watching a movie. I mean, as cliche as that sounds, our house is pretty sweet in that it's sort of like a grown-up playground. There's a rock climbing wall, this crazy tree net. So imagine like a bunch of climbing ropes
Uh huh.
turned into sort of like a Spider-Man web
Uh huh.
in the trees. So taking an adult beverage up there at sunset and just kind of literally hanging out, that's hard to beat. Taking the dog for a bike or run is always a highlight. Um, yeah, stuff like that. It's weird though because my day to day is so dynamic that it doesn't always feel like work, and so sometimes if there's some weird thing that comes up with work that's super different or out of the norm, that almost feels like a break. Um, yeah,
Is it all work? Is it work to you, or do you? I mean, you're always moving, so is you gotta love it to live it.
yeah. You know what's funny is it only um, usually it doesn't feel like work. It feels like work when I feel like it's a burden to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm at home in Austin visiting my parents and I have such a pinned day that I like can't even go. I mean, here's an example. I'm getting my van rewrapped down in Austin,
Mm-hmm.
and we were leaving the next day. I had to ride a lot that day, pack all that sort of thing, and the schedule was so pinned that I didn't even have time to go drop off the van.
Yeah.
And fortunately, my dad did it, and that doesn't always feel good. Um, my girlfriend Nicole has to go through that a lot. So I would say that it feels like work when kind of the ridiculousness and the surface of my job feels like a burden on others. But from my standpoint, I still love it all so much. There are definitely days on the bike that feel like work. You know, if I have to ride 5 hours and it's 40 degrees and raining,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm on a 28-hour week and it's the last day of a 28-hour week, that definitely feels like work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but by and large, it doesn't.
How long do you think? You think you'll be doing this the rest of your life, or? I mean, obviously, there's a point where you can't be a professional rider anymore. When do you think? When do you think that is for you? Do you think you're gonna retire
Yeah, it's a
early, or are
good
you gonna
question.
take it as
No,
long as you can
definitely not
go?
retire. Definitely not retire early. I mean, I'm someone that I think has been able to live a pretty balanced life as an athlete, and by
Mm-hmm.
that I mean have interests outside of just training and racing. And so I think there are some racers who just focus 100% on that, blinders on, and they get to like 32, 34 years old, and they're just done. They
Yeah.
want nothing to do with their bike. But that hasn't really been my attitude. And so I love training. I love racing. I would love to do it until I'm no longer competitive in the pro category, and then I'd love to do it, as a quote unquote amateur rider, just for fun here and there. But I do have a really big passion for the creative stuff too.
Yeah.
So I think slowly but surely I'll transition more and more into the storytelling type stuff, adventure type stuff, and honestly helping Nicole with her nonprofit Path of Logic, because that's
That's
really
awesome.
really going places.
Yeah.
So I think over the years I'll begin doing more and more of that as well. But I hope to keep living this sort of non-traditional circus, so to speak,
Yeah.
indefinitely.
That's awesome. So what's been your favorite experience traveling around the world, all these different races? What's been your favorite, most memorable? Can be a race, anything. What's been your most memorable moment from your professional career?
Um, yeah, again, that's hard to say. I mean, superlatives like that are just tricky when those
Mm-hmm.
op when those
There's so many.
experiences. Yeah, exactly. But in professionally speaking, I mean, a major turning point was when I did this race in Mongolia in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
I was a senior in college, had almost no money, was earning money racing, but you know, not really the amount of money that you'd want to live on. Just kind of beating my head against the wall on the World Cup scene and not enjoying being in Europe and that sort of thing. And here and there through the grapevine, hearing about this rise in more adventure racing and uh, non UCI World Cup stuff, whether it be like 6-day stage races or the Leadville 100 or Epic Ride Series, like these big mass participation events that were more like they actually took you somewhere rather
Mm-hmm.
than a 3 to 5 kilometer track in the middle of like some downtown city in France,
Yeah.
as with like a man-made course, which is what World Cup racing is. You could go out and do a 3 or 4 hour race that traversed an entire mountain range, and there were 2,000 people on the start line, 3,000 people on the start line, and like Outside Magazine would do a story about it or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I kept hearing about these events, but all of my peers were like World Cup, Olympics, Olympics, and so I was kind of caught up in that. Um, and then finally, towards the end of sorry, loud truck here. Towards the end of the season in 2016, I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna go. I got this random invite to go do this race in Mongolia, called the Mongolia Bike Challenge, 6-day stage race, and I was like, you know what, season's kind of coming to an end. My team is definitely not going to send me to this because it's not on their typical cross country circuit of interests. But I'm just going to like drain my savings account. I am looking down the barrel of graduating from college and getting a part-time job
Mm-hmm.
to continue racing professionally. And maybe there's something to these other style events. So I spent pretty much my bottom dollar to get to Mongolia. Had the most incredible experience. Um, Won the race. Kind of ironically, some really top World Cup racers showed up to that
Yeah.
race, and I think I was only like 22 or 23 years old. But I
Wow.
won the race, which was kind of a surprise based on how I stacked up to these guys on the World Cup, and I realized, I love this style of racing where your bike really takes you somewhere A to B, and also it seems like I'm a lot more suited to it, just physiologically and psychologically. Um, and I randomly got an interview with Outside. Sponsors started taking more interest. And 2017 is when things really started to pick up, and I started focusing more on that style of racing. And I guess the rest is kind of history. But it was funny because it felt like such a massive gamble at the time.
Yeah.
Um, but it was kind of the turning point and something I'll never forget.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Besides Lucy, do you have a specific person that's kind of influenced your whole life?
Well, my parents, of course, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one of the folks that I look up to a lot is Travis Brown. He lives here in Durango. He's one of the top mountain bikers in his day. Went to the 2000 Olympics in Sydney. Definite icon of the sport, but I look to him not necessarily for athletic reasons, but more professional reasons. His interests have always been really diverse. He's got an awesome way of looking at the world that's kind of a whole other conversation. And he these days is the lead. How would I describe his position? Basically, he's a product developer for Trek. So his garage is like this crazy mad scientist looking bike shop area with a bunch of bike stands and weird bikes that'll never see the light of day, and like broken frames and broken wheels that he's pushed too hard. And people don't really know, but so many of the innovations in our industry come out of that garage. He was pivotal for 29-inch wheels. He and Gary Fisher were arm in arm on 29-inch wheels. Plus size tires came out of his garage. All kinds of stuff. And he's sort of these days he's a little bit of an unsung hero. He has no problem keeping a low profile. He spent many years like dyeing his hair red and winning national championships. And these days he doesn't need that. He's happy just taking a back seat and kind of driving the industry without people knowing. So he's someone that I just think is like just super cool.
That's awesome.
And the kind of person that I'd love to be when I'm 50.
And he's the one that you said he's the one that made plus tires a big thing.
In a way, yeah. I mean, a lot of the acceptance of plus size tires were his driving force, and boost size hub, boost spacing hubs. A lot of incremental improvements that we all enjoy these days.
With your bikes, do you do your own repairs? Obviously, during races and everything, I'm sure you have your own team that mechanics and all that kind of stuff. Do you do a lot of stuff by yourself, or
as I can? I'm not a great mechanic.
Not a great mechanic.
It's actually funny. This pandemic year has really given me appreciation for the support that I get throughout the year from the team at races.
Yeah.
I mean, just like the sheer number of miles that I put on bikes really takes a toll. And I sort of took for granted, every time I went home from a race, I had new brake pads and new chain, fresh cassette, and all that sort of thing, greased headset, and the bike always sounded good and ran smoothly. And then when we've gone a whole year without that, I'm like, ugh, my bikes are running a little rough. I need to.
You hear every little creak.
Skills. Yeah, so I do what I can, but I'm definitely not a bike mechanic. I get by.
Yeah, you get by. That's okay. Well, yeah, quarantine forces you kind of learn some new stuff. I'm trying to put an oval chain ring on my bike, and I can't stinking figure my bike out. What's been the big question I get a lot of the time is, what's the biggest wreck you've ever had on you? Everybody gets in a wreck. It's bound to happen sooner or later. What's been the worst, or what's your choice of the worst one for you? It might have not been the most gruesome one, but what's your worst wreck?
Probably 2014. All right, they're giving us our 15-minute warning here. Sorry. It's funny, the hot spring is going to close right when theoretically.
Right when we're done.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, in 2014, I was riding. I'm not gonna throw the brand under the bus. It's not for anyone.
You're good.
I don't ride for this brand these days, but I'll still not mention them. But I was riding a prototype wheel, and it didn't really like the interface, apparently, that it had with this tire I was running. And so I was going around pavement corner really fast, and the tire just blew off the rim, and I went down on my elbow really badly, and just exploded my Electronon, and had to have a plate and screws put in.
What's an Electronon?
Electronon, it's your elbow. Basically.
Okay.
It's just the pointy.
Get all scientific there. Electronon.
And
I'm touching my Electronon right now.
I had that hard. I had that hardware in for like 4 years, and then one of the screw heads was about to kind of break through the skin. It just wasn't happy because it was right under the skin.
Mm-hmm.
So I got that hardware out, and unfortunately, with that secondary surgery, the surgeon cut a nerve
Ah.
that cut off supply to one of the bellies of my tricep muscle. So I basically have like 2/3 of a tricep on my right side. Um, so the crash was gnarly for sure, but I've probably had more violent crashes, but overall, that's the injury that's had the greatest impact, ongoing impact, I would say at this point.
That sounds nasty. That's horrible.
Fortunately for bike riding, you don't need that much upper body, so it's all good.
Yeah, yeah, but it's fun to have. That kind of cuts in not needing as much muscle. Cuts into the next question. Supposed to ask you about what's your thoughts on, and I'm sorry if you're offended, but what's your thoughts on e-bikes?
Not offended at all. I had the great pleasure of helping Trek launch their all new E-Caliber, brand new
Mm-hmm.
E-Caliber bike, which is basically a Trek Super Caliber but e-bike version. I think e-bikes are awesome. I think they have all kinds of applications. I've really enjoyed riding them. I think they open tons of doors for all different kinds of people. And I'm all for it. I don't entirely understand the fear and the
Yeah.
pushback that some people seem to, to push their way. But I think e-bikes could be really important for a whole bunch of improvements, both recreationally and then just transportation wise. A lot of people say that electric cars are the future, um, but I'd like to think that e-bikes are also a major part of the future. I mean, like there's no reason that you need to drive to the grocery store every time. Like you can take an e-bike to the grocery store 75% of the time when all you're getting is 5 things and you're not doing that huge shopping trip. So yeah, I'm all for them.
That's awesome. So, what is? I had a question. I just had a brain fart. That's awesome. The view behind you kind of makes you look like you're in a green screen. That's really weird. Maybe it's the reflection of the water and everything. But
Yeah.
we'll kind of cut it short here, so you can so you don't get in trouble with the authorities. Um, if anybody has a quick question, we'll ask that real quickly. Make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe the channel. Go and check out Payson's podcast, which is called The Adventure Stash. It's pretty awesome. It's I listen to it a lot of times when I'm driving to work and everything too. So, but what is your to kind of end it? Do you have a favorite quote, a favorite scripture, favorite words that someone in the past has said that kind of gives you a direction on your life?
Yeah, a handful, but I think my favorite for a good few years now has been prejudice rarely survives experience. And I think that can be applied to a lot of things, but it sort of makes me want to continue to prioritize travel and also just immersing myself in different situations. So the trip to Uganda was a big example, a more obvious example, but even just obviously not as much during COVID, but trying to surround yourself with people that you might not typically associate with.
Mm-hmm.
Go to places you wouldn't typically choose to go to. Try to, I mean, even more specifically from a bike riding standpoint, try styles of riding that you've never tried. A lot of times, I think the fear or hesitation that people feel, regardless of the situation, comes from the unknowns, and
Mm-hmm.
that's normal. But so frequently, whether you sit down with someone and have a conversation that you wouldn't typically cross paths with, try a sport that you never thought you would, try some crazy food in a foreign country that you never thought you would. All of those, I think, come together over time to make you a better person, and more able to contribute to the world in a positive way. So I'd say that's a quote that I try to live by and always keep in the back of my mind.
It's awesome. Get out of your comfort zone a little bit here or there.
Yeah.
Stretch yourself. Last question, and we'll end it on that. And it's kind of perfect for how I run, like my channel and just me personally. A little goofy mustache coffee drinking advice. Oh, and now we got Porter. Porter's on now.
Oh God. Mustache. I don't know. I mean, I drink it the same way I did when I didn't have a mustache.
You don't have to flip it up and no,
Just
put
keep
it down.
it trim.
Keep it trim. Keep it trim. Porter says, ready to come learn backflips with me, Payson. He wants to know if you're ready to come learn backflips.
He is positive. That's like an easy thing that I can pick up, and I just don't know, man. I don't know. I mean, I'm open to it. Like we just said, prejudice rarely survives experience.
There you go. Get yourself out of the comfort zone. Go hang out with Eric.
That's like way out. We'll see. I'm not saying no. I'm just not exactly jumping.
Hey, they got inflatables. You can land on an inflatable. Doesn't hurt that bad.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, dude, I appreciate you so much for being on, and it was a blast. And everybody, make sure, like I said, go and check out his YouTube channel, his podcast, his website, everything. Maybe you'll see him do a backflip here with Eric Porter soon, and it'll be awesome. Check out the mustache. There's tons of mustaches on the internet from him. So appreciate it, guys. Make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe. And like I say every single time, guys, make sure you lift up God, lift up life, lift up the adventure. Get out there, make your own adventures. I'll talk to you guys later. God bless. And again, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. Talk to you guys later.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeremy.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, man. All done.